Welcome back to the review space. In this video, we're going to take a look at the top 30 PS3 games of all time. What are the top 30 essential, must-have PlayStation 3 games ever released on the PS3 console? I already gave you guys my list of the top 30 PS2 games. I already talked plenty about the PS2, so we're going to move on to the next generation. I think the 7th generation of the PS3, from the mid-2000s all the way up to the 2010s, early mid-2010s, as far as the bulk of the PlayStation 3 releases, its best games, and we're going to find out what was the best year of the PlayStation 3 as well, as far as the amazing games that they put out. So we're going to start from number 30, and we're going to count down all the way to the best, all the way up to number 1. Alright, coming in at number 30. Number 30 is XCOM Enemy Unknown. This one came out in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And this is a great little shooter, kind of a niche style, because it's not like any other game that I've ever played on the PS3. I'm sure there's similar games like on the PC and other titles here and there that kind of resemble it. And from what I understand, this is like a remake or a reimagining of an old game from like the mid-90s. I think like the original game came out like in '94, some kind of PC or computer game called XCOM Enemy Unknown. But this one is more stylistically, the graphics, the presentation, the animation. It's very, very fun to play. I remember downloading this, I think, or initially I had it on the PS Plus. I had the PS Plus service, which I could play games temporarily for free. Ultimately, I ended up getting it on some kind of a three-pack thing from I believe it was it 2K? One of those three-pack compilation discs with 3 separate games. But solid game. This is one of the most fun games I've ever enjoyed in the PlayStation 3, especially because again, the style, the gameplay is a little bit different compared to any other games out there. It's basically a tactical shooter type of game. It's like the strategy tactical shooter where you move the characters. You control these marine-esque characters. They fire weapons and stuff. So kind of like a Gears of War or something like that, where the characters have guns and stuff like that. But the purpose of the game is to basically attack enemy aliens. These enemy alien greys. The gray aliens with a big head and all that. The classic like 1950s UFO type of aliens, and they're basically the enemy in this game. And so you have to, as the human race, as the human faction, you have to go up against them. And basically, the idea of the game is to place your characters on the map. So you're presented a map, which is basically a level, and you can only have certain spaces to move as you advance in the map, in the stage. So you keep advancing. But it's like a turn-based strategy as well. It's a turn-based system where you attack the enemy, it's your turn, and then you switch turns, and then it's the enemy's turn, and then they attack you. So you go back and forth. Turn-based strategy style, turn-based tactical shooter style, and your placement has to be on point. The way that you place these characters, it's very strategic, and so you have to really think and plan out your attack. You can't just rush in there and attack in the open. I guess the closest game that I played before this would be something like Bahamut Lagoon. I thought Bahamut Lagoon was a really fun turn-based RPG type of game. I believe that one came out in the Super Famicom back in the day. I played it on the emulator many years ago, like 10 years ago. And so that was a really fun game, Bahamut Lagoon. But this one, XCOM Enemy Unknown, is kind of like a PS3 version of those style of games where you place your characters, you place your teammates and your allies and stuff on a strategic area on the map. So you have to put them behind a cover, for example, or behind a car, behind a wall, so that they're able to hide or at least have some cover from the enemy fire. And so you take turns. And again, solid game. It's something that I recommend to anybody that enjoys a more slower paced, more methodical type of gameplay. So it's a very fun game for sure, and it's something that you should check out at least once on the PlayStation 3. Alright, coming in at number 29, Spec Ops The Line. This one is another game from 2012. Spec Ops The Line, I believe, is a multi-plat game. It didn't just come out on the PlayStation 3. I'm sure it came out on 360 and, maybe the PC, I'm not sure. But on the PS3, I beat this game, I finished it, I completed the storyline. Pretty good storyline, pretty good plot. This is very comparable to XCOM in that this is another game that sort of is a reboot from an older franchise. I believe the Spec Ops series has been around since at least the mid-late 90s, all the way into the early 2000s, and the last game, the official game that came out, was like 2002. And then that was it for the series. So the series was dormant or stagnant for like 10 years. There was nothing from the Spec Ops franchise anymore. So a whole decade, pretty much a whole 10 years went by, and then Spec Ops The Line came out. This one is more of a third-person shooter type of experience. So very similar to something like a Gears of War. So if you ever enjoyed Gears of War on the Xbox 360 systems, this is the closest you'll get on the PlayStation 3 to a Gears of War type of experience. That whole third-person shooter type of gameplay, hiding behind a cover system, so hiding behind a wall, hiding behind something that would cover you from the enemy fire, and then you shoot back into the you go back and forth. And the plot is what really sets it apart. It's basically these soldiers, these military American soldiers, I guess, and then they're fighting in, I believe it was someplace in the Middle East. These desert areas, these large desert areas, but very desolate-looking stages. You'll have like massive, I guess you could call it like a sandstorm kind of thing, covering some of the buildings. So it's a lot of desert-looking things, but also like buried underneath is this urban decay, these buildings that sort of almost like if you can imagine like Dubai post-apocalyptic style, what I'm saying, all covered with sand and everything, buried underneath like a sandstorm. So very enjoyable game. The plot is pretty good. It has some psychological things where the character is experiencing some I guess you could call it like what do you call it, like flashes of memory. What do you call it? Those memory flashes. Back. What is it? Oh God, I'm forgetting already. But anyway, enjoyable shooter. I like the story. I like the plot all the way up to the end. The ending. It did start to get a little bit kind of predictable by the end because I've seen movies and stories like this that have some kind of like ending where the ending is kind of a plot twist at the end where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what it is. But it still is a pretty good payoff, and it still is a very cool, kind of a unique shooter in that, there's really nothing else like it as far as military shooters. This one is a third-person Gears of War style shooter. Most shooters out there are basically a first-person, so FPS constantly, but this one is more of a traditional third-person shooter, very fun to play, and it's you got the allies. It's more of a combat like team-based kind of thing where you have different characters by your as an ally. Throughout the stages, for most of it anyway. Sometimes you'll go through a stage alone and by yourself, and it feels a little bit more isolated, but fun to play because of the plot itself and its presentation. The graphics are pretty good. The storyline is pretty good, like the voice acting, and it is just an enjoyable title on the PlayStation 3. Kind of an underrated game too. So I believe number 29 is a pretty good spot to be in. Top 30 PS3 games of all time. So moving on, number 28. Number 28 is Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Another game from 2012. Can you believe this? 3 games in a row from 2012. Well, I was very skeptical when this game was announced. Not even when it came out, but when it was announced. I think way back in 2011. I was like, oh God, this is a gimmicky type of fighting game. Your typical like take multiple franchises and multiple gimmicks and put different characters from different franchises and just mash them all up, kind of like Smash Brothers and all the other gimmick fighting games. Like you'll have a guest character from this franchise and that franchise, and Assassin's Creed in Soul Calibur, or Kratos from God of War in Soul Calibur and Mortal Kombat, and so on and so forth. Just constant gimmick after gimmick. But with Street Fighter Cross Tekken, it was quite enjoyable. I mean, it took me back to the days of the early 90s with a 2D point of view. It carries the same formula as the Street Fighter 4 lineage. You know how the Street Fighter 4 came out. I believe this is more enjoyable than the Street Fighter 4 series, though. And going all the way back from Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 4 Arcade and all the other additional Street Fighter 4 titles, like Ultra, all those extra added additions to Street Fighter 4 and other installments. I believe Street Fighter Cross Tekken is probably the most enjoyable one, just because it has the Tekken characters in it. I'm a big Tekken fan, so I enjoyed it just because of that. And the graphics are pretty good, the stage designs are pretty cool, and the gameplay is solid 2D fighting action. I mean, it really is a pretty good 2D fighting game, and it kind of took me back a little bit to the days of like Marvel vs. Capcom a little bit. You want to talk about gimmick crossovers. Something like that, where you have multiple characters from two different franchises going head-to-head in this big war, this makeshift war between the two franchises. And it's sort of a dream battle, too, a dream-like war or crossover, because when I was a kid, I was a big fan of Street Fighter. I always knew about Tekken, became a big Tekken fan as I got older. And so the idea of the two franchises going head-to-head was kind of just like, it was a bit of a novelty. I never thought of it like that. I never thought that would ever happen, where the Tekken characters would be fighting against Street Fighter characters. It just didn't seem like something that would take place. Like, imagine if someday they make a video game that has Mario characters, from the Super Mario franchise by Nintendo, and put him up against Halo characters, or God of War or something like that. It seems unpredictable. Something that you just never imagined would happen. So fun gameplay, like all the way up to the final boss. It's enjoyable. I just personally love both franchises. I'm a fan of both brands, Street Fighter and Tekken, and it's in 2D mode. So the fact that it's in 2D mode and gameplay, kind of like the Street Fighter style, taken more so from the Capcom 2D fighting game style instead of the 3D Tekken style of Namco, it is quite enjoyable. They're able to translate really well into that style. And from what I understand, they are going to release some kind of Tekken Street Fighter thing, but it's more on the Tekken side. I'm assuming that's the next direction they're going to go to. But this one is something that you got to check out just as a 2D fighting game fanatic. It's something it's a novelty. It's a little bit different from the usual Street Fighter stuff because you got the Tekken edition in there, and it's a nice mashup of both franchises. Even though it's basically almost like a throwaway game. It's something like it's not official canon to the storyline of each franchise. At least I don't think it's canon. But the gameplay is good enough where I think it should be. It's my favorite out of the 2D fighting games for sure. I think it's better than Street Fighter 4 and any of its incarnations. It's better than anything from King of Fighters, the more recent King of Fighters games on the PS3, and anything from like Naruto and all that stuff that came out. All these Blaze Blue, that's another one, the Blaze Blue series. I'm just going to pick Street Fighter Cross Tekken just because the gameplay is there, the graphics are good, and the characters make me excited about it. I guess the only real negative thing I could say is that I had to spend extra money to buy the rest of the roster. Like half the roster was missing, and I have to spend an extra $20 just to unlock these stupid characters that's already in the disc anyway. I had to pay extra money in order to access them, which is absolutely typical money hungry Capcom. I'm saying that was a horrible move for them, but I did it anyway just because I was such a big fan. I spend even more money on the additional, bonus costumes. They have alternate costumes for the characters, and you have to pay real extra money. You know what I mean? On the PSN, you got to spend even more cash on that. But in my opinion, I thought it was worth it because I mean, it's a fun game. It's a fun 2D fighting game. You know what I'm saying? It's the best 2D fighting game that I can think of from the Capcom cartoonish style. All right, coming in at number 27. Number 27 is Dishonored, another game from 2012. So we got 4 games from 2012 right here already. So 2012 has dominated this list so far. Dishonored, I thought, was a pretty solid first-person type of game. It's basically a stealth game, kind of similar, I guess, to kind of like a Thief type of game, although a little bit more, maybe a little bit more fast-paced, or a little bit more, I don't even want to use the word arcadey, but like, yeah, kind of like a faster-paced Thief, I guess. But Dishonored is still a pretty damn good game. I mean, this is one of my favorite titles on the PS3. I love the stealth engine, sneaking up behind the enemies, climbing on top of the rooftop and the bars, up in the ceiling, and you basically have to use your brain, and you have to use some kind of strategy in order to, dispose of the enemies and attack the enemies and get rid of them, basically. I enjoy the heck out of this title, man. I mean, it's kind of a what is that word? I don't want to use the word cyberpunk. It's not cyberpunk. That's the wrong word. It's like steampunk, kind of like a steampunkish type of presentation where you have technology mixed in with some like sort of like old school, riding on old school boats and ships and stuff like that. Almost like this took place in, I don't know, the late 1700s or 1800s or something, but mixed in with a little bit more modern technology and weapons and stuff like that. And the storyline's not bad. It's kind of a decent storyline. From what I remember, the things that you do affects the outcome of the game. So, it's one of those titles where you have to, there's almost like a morality system. Your typical thing where the morality thing affects, what you do affects the outcome of the game. So if you do more quote-unquote evil things or bad things, the ending will be a little bit different from if you decide to play the game in a bit more of a positive way, or if you do things in a more heroic kind of way, if you act more like a hero, and that would involve usually like disposing of the enemy. So if you're taking care of an enemy, you can either, I think you can either like basically get rid of them, eliminate them, put them under, put them in a dirt nap, send them 6 feet under kind of thing, and end their lives basically, or you can just basically knock them out. And I really love the stealth system in this game. You have to kind of sneak around and really be stealthy in this particular title. I just really enjoyed it. From beginning to end, Dishonored. It was fun enough that I ended up downloading the extra DLC content and spending more money on the DLC as well. So I actually ended up buying some of the additional bonus content and additional stages in there. Dishonored, really solid title from 2012. All right, number 26, Bayonetta. Bayonetta. This one is from 2009. I enjoyed Bayonetta. Thought it was a good game. It was difficult enough that I wasn't able to finish it. I wasn't able to go all the way up to the final boss and stuff like that. But I got pretty far. I sunk enough hours in it where I enjoyed it, and I had my time with it. I had my fill with Bayonetta. Good game. You know what I mean? It's a good, enjoyable title. It's up there with the God of War series, in my opinion, and the Devil May Cry. It's enjoyable enough where. And it's unique enough. The main character, it's a female hero this time around. She's a butt-kicking goddess type of character. She's really powerful, and she's jumping all over the place. It's got this comedic Japanese sense of humor. So if you ever played games like God Hand and those kind of titles, and what's the other, No More Heroes, and those kind of games, it has kind of that sense of humor, that Japanese sense of humor that's like, it's kind of cartoonish. It's got these wacky characters. Bayonetta is it's a solid title, man. I mean, I can't really praise it enough. The gameplay is good. It's this action adventure style, almost like a hack and slash mixed with. It reminds me more of Devil May Cry actually than God of War. You know, the style is more similar to a DMC where you have a shooting. You know, the character is firing off the gun. She's got the projectile weaponry, and you can fire off the gun. I don't think God of War has that. He doesn't. You know, Kratos is not walking around with a magnum or anything like that. Bayonetta has the guns. She's got the weapon. I think she's got like a blade or a sword kind of thing. So it's a very cool game. You know, very sexy. She's presented in a very sexually enticing kind of way. So there's a lot of fan service in this game for the fellas for sure. So I like that. I really am digging that sexual appeal to it. So it's a good game. You know, it's something that you got to check out at least once, just for its quirkiness and its action-adventure style gameplay. I can't stress enough how challenging this game is. It is a title that will kick your butt. You have to be really good at these kind of action-adventure, hack-and-slash type of games. Number 25. Number 25 is Sonic and AllStars Racing Transformed, another one from 2012. Alright, so we what is that? 4 out of 5 in this list is already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 5 out of 6 I think titles on this list is already from 2012. Sonic and AllStars Racing Transformed. This is the part 2, the sequel to the original Sonic and AllStars Racing. I believe that one came out in 2010. The first Sonic All-Stars Racing. That one was a pretty good game. I kind of had to choose between the two, between this one and between 2010 and 2012, the original All-Stars and Transformed. Ultimately, I ended up choosing Transformed because as much as I liked the original All-Stars Racing, it was very similar enough to, you know, the Mario Kart series and previous years, you know, the past like 15 years of kart racing games. Sonic and All-Stars Racing from 2010 was already very similar to it, where I didn't feel like it was innovating anything. It was fun and it was enjoyable, and the graphics were good, and the music was good, and everything. The stage designs were awesome. But I think Transformed is a little bit different. They try to add in that transforming gimmick, kind of like I guess maybe it's like a nod to Transformers. You know what I mean? Like where you have the vehicles transforming. You know, maybe it was an influence. The Transformers series influenced this franchise. But it's fun. I mean, it works because in the middle of the racing thing, the stages are structured in a way where your vehicles go from a terrain vehicle that is like a four-wheel vehicle on the ground, and then it turns into something that could ride the water, like a water vehicle, and then it turns into something that can fly in the air, some kind of airplane or aircraft type of vehicle. And that happens throughout the stages, throughout the different multiple transformations throughout the same level. So that's the main gimmick of the game, is that it changes from throughout the course of the game. So I thought that was kind of cool. You know what I mean? It changes up the presentation a little bit, and it's a fun you know, kart racing title. It's a fun kart racing game, and it's interesting because, I mean, this is a fun game. From what I remember with the PS2, you know, so the previous generation on the PlayStation 2, the PS2 never really had that many good kart racing games. But here on the PS3, I mean, you have Sonic All-Stars, the first one, you got Transformed, you got Mod Nation Racer, so you got these multiple different titles, Little Big Planet Karting, that are kart racing games, and finally they have kart racing really focused on that. The PS2, I felt like, just did not have that many good, memorable kart racing games aside from like Crash Nitro Kart or something like that. So this one is really fun on the PlayStation 3. It's something that you gotta check out. This one, along with the 2010 one, they're sort of neck and neck, but again, I had to choose Transform because it is a newer installment. It is a little bit different with the transforming vehicles, but it's got the same, like, you know, cool stage designs, you know, good music, you know. So the presentation is really solid, and you got the bonus, like, you know, bonus courses and additional things that you can do as far as unlocking certain things and you know, achievements and all that stuff. So this is a solid kart racing title on the PlayStation 3. I've always enjoyed the Mario Kart series and those kind of kart racing games, but this one, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, is one of my favorite racing games on the PlayStation 3. Coming in at number 24 is Killzone 3. This one came out in 2011. Oh, I believe like early 2011, like really early in that year too. So Killzone 3 is obviously the follow-up to Killzone 2. I really enjoyed Killzone 2. When Killzone first began on the original on the PS2, you know, as the original series started, I think the first one came out way back in 2004. It wasn't a good game. I felt very disappointed with it. I wasn't impressed with the gameplay. I thought it was really boring, and it was just a mediocre first-person shooter on the PS2. But around the PS3, they put out Killzone 2. I think this was like 2009. Very fun game. They really improved so much on the gameplay, on the presentation, the pacing of the game, the CPU. So the opponents are a little bit more intelligent in the way that they moved and the way they attacked you. They would hide behind covers and they would move around a little bit more. They were, you know, more challenging. So Killzone 2 was really enjoyable. What a great improvement from the past Killzone, the original Killzone from 2004. So Killzone 3 comes out a couple of years later. Solid game. I would say it's a little bit better than Killzone 2, just because it feels more like a bigger game. There's more things to do. The enemies are a little bit more varied here. The style of gameplay is a little bit more evolved. Riding the vehicles and fighting the enemies and the stage designs. It's a little bit more. It's better than Killzone 2. It's an improvement, a slight improvement over Killzone 2. And I thought Killzone 2 was already a really good game. So from the graphics, the gameplay, the enemy, and the things that you can do, like I remember like in Killzone 3, you're riding like jetpacks. I thought that was like really fun and really cool. I'm not saying that I mean jetpacks are not original. It's not like this brand new thing, but it was fun. The way that they implemented it in Killzone 3, I thought was quite enjoyable, and it was something unique. So I quite enjoyed it. That was awesome. You know what I'm saying? I can't say enough good things. It's just an awesome exclusive to the PlayStation console, the PS3 console. I mean, I would suggest getting both Killzone 2 and Killzone 3, but between the two, I would pick Killzone 3. I thought it's a little bit better than Killzone 2. Alright, number 23, Tekken Tag Tournament 2. This one is another title from 2012. Right, so this one is a sequel from the original Tekken Tag Tournament way back from the late 90s, early 2000s. I believe it came out on the PS2, the original one, in 2000. So this one is about 12 years later, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 on the PlayStation 3. But I believe it also came out on multi-plats. Yeah, it came out on the Xbox 360 as well. And if I'm not mistaken, also on the Wii U later down the line. So Tekken Tag 2 Tournament 2 is quite enjoyable. It's one of my personal favorites when it comes to the 3D fighting game. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is the best 3D fighting game that you can find on the PlayStation 3. I mean, I thought it was better than the DOA series, of course, even better than Virtua Fighter 5, which I thought Virtua Fighter 5 was a pretty damn good game from I think around like 2006 or 2007. But Tekken Tag Tournament 2 is a solid, really good 3D fighting game and a worthy installment to the Tekken franchise. My impression was that you know the Tekken series was kind of fallen off after like Tekken 6. When Tekken 6 came out around like 2009, I was really disappointed with it. I thought the stage designs were garbage, the music sucked, the presentation overall was just not up to par. I thought it was a big disappointment, especially compared to Tekken 5. I thought Tekken 5 was this really awesome fighting game on the PlayStation 2, one of the best on the PS2 library, and then to go from that into Tekken 6, this disappointing piece of trash on the PlayStation 3, I thought was just super disappointing. And so when we get to Tekken Tag Tournament 2, they have pretty good stage designs. a pretty good soundtrack. You know, I am digging the more modernized, you know, it's 2012, so they have more dubsteppy influence, more EDM influence in the soundtrack, but they still have the same, you know, like electronic, techno-ish kind of soundtrack, rave music. You know, so it's quite an eclectic mix of different styles when it comes to the soundtrack, as Tekken should be. You know, and I thought that with Tekken 6, I thought it was such a crappy soundtrack, very lackluster. And with Tekken Tag Tournament 2, they kind of step it up a little bit. It's a little bit better, and it sort of reminds me of the Tekken 5 era, the Dark Resurrection era, you know, and Tekken 4. So as far as gameplay, it's just as fast-paced, it's just as fun, and just as you know, it's very addictive, and it's even easier to do combos. They carry over the whole dribbling style, which is basically bouncing the opponent from the ground and all that. So they carry that over from the Tekken 6 installment, and then you have the addition of the Tekken Tag gimmick, where you switch back and forth the different characters. But my only main concern is the fact that these Tekken Tag games are completely non-canon to the main story. So I mean, they're completely irrelevant to the main series. So whatever happens in the cutscenes and animations, it has nothing to do with the main storyline. So it's just it's meaningless. It's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. But I mean, I guess it's, you know, it's still cool to play through the arcade mode and go through the ghost mode, I should say, and then try to rank up your characters. And the CPU gets harder and harder, and you gotta really you know, you gotta get good with these characters. You gotta master each character. So Tekken Tag Tournament 2, I would say it's not as good as the previous installments of Tekken, like Tekken 5 or Dark Resurrection, but I believe it's good enough. It's a worthy sequel to the original Tekken Tag Tournament, way back from the late 90s, early 2000s. Alright, coming in at number 22. Number 22 is Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption came out in 2010. I believe this was a sequel to Red Dead Revolver. That one came out in the mid 2000s on the PS2 console, I think. And this is one of the best games I've ever played, hands down, as far as like open world third-person shooters. You know, I mean, this is very enjoyable. Love the gameplay. Love the riding around a horse. These wide environments in nature, in the forest, and you know, going through the wilderness basically. And sometimes you got to fight through a bear. You got to fight a grizzly bear that's going to attack you. You're going to fight animals that try to attack you. So that can be quite fun when you're a hunter. Basically, you have weapons and rifles and guns, and you gotta take them down, and you're hunting them. And when you take out these animals, these beasts of the wild, you can go up to their carcasses and harness their skin. So you can take their skin and the meat and all that and sell it for profit. How awesome is that? That's great, right? It's tremendous. That's my favorite part of this game. I mean, I love the whole hunting thing. You know, you go in the middle of the some forest, in the middle of nowhere, and you're just alone in the woods, and then all of a sudden you're being attacked by a bear or a wolf or something like that, some kind of animal. Tremendous, absolutely fun. As far as the storyline itself, I never really paid too much attention to the story. It's a long campaign, so it just goes on and on and on. I did manage to beat it all the way up to the end, but it's a very long campaign. It's kind of like the GTA series, because it is from Rockstar. They take a long time to beat the game, but it's quite enjoyable, very fun to play, and it's just a fun Western type of game. This is, I really enjoyed Gun on the PS2. Gun, the video game. That was fun, and this is sort of like an updated version of that in some ways. Very similar. You're riding a horse. There's a wilderness. You gotta get rid of animals. You're being attacked by bandits that are shooting at you with their guns on horses, and chase scenes, and cowboys and Indians and all that stuff. Fun stuff. Absolutely tremendous. This is a quality game. Red Dead Redemption. You have to check this out at least once. Coming in number 21. Number 21 is Dead Rising 2. This one came out in 2010. One of the most enjoyable zombie games I've ever played. This might be the best zombie, like pure zombie experience as far as video games is concerned. Unfortunately, I never really got to play the original Dead Rising on the Xbox 360. I think that one came out way back in 2006 from Capcom. This one is the sequel, the one that came out in 2010. Dead Rising 2 is quite enjoyable. I mean, you can see like the influence of movies like Dawn of the Dead. You know, the original Dawn of the Dead from the late 1970s. That was a classic, awesome zombie movie. One of my favorite zombie movies of all time. Dawn of the Dead was awesome because that game, that movie takes place in the mall. You know what I'm saying? So you have these small group of humans. They have to defend themselves against this zombie-infested shopping mall. You know what I'm saying? And they're kind of isolated, and they gotta maneuver and work their way around these zombies inside this mall. Dead Rising 2 is kind of like that. You're basically stuck in a mall, and you gotta go through these different slow-moving zombies. And I love the fact that it's slow-moving zombies. It's the classic, you know, very slow, very dull-moving, sluggish zombies, but there's a lot of them, you know what I'm saying? So the whole mall is just littered and filled with these undead creatures that are out to basically eat your brain. And if you get too close to them, they'll swipe at you, they'll hurt you, they'll damage you, and you might end up getting snuffed out by these zombies. So you got to be careful. There's a timer, which I personally find really annoying, but that makes it even more challenging. It would be nice to just kind of explore the mall without having that stupid timer. You know what I'm saying? You gotta go through these stages, and you gotta go through the different missions, and you have this really annoying timer, like, you know, counting down and all that. You gotta get you gotta get a certain thing. You gotta get this for the girl, the young daughter of the main character. You gotta save her because she needs some medication. So you gotta find medication, and you gotta do it within a specific amount of time. And so that can be quite challenging and quite annoying. But overall, the gameplay itself is just so fun, and it's such a unique experience. And there's nothing else like it. I mean, you know, aside from I guess the original Dead Rising. Dead Rising 2, very colorful too. I love the graphics. One thing that I noticed with Dead Rising 3, the one that came out on the Xbox One, the newer Dead Rising, is it doesn't have as much color compared to Dead Rising 2. It's not as colorful, it's not as bright, it doesn't have that very colorful, standout design, and it looks a lot more dull. You know, Dead Rising 3 looks more dull and lifeless compared to Dead Rising 2. So I think Dead Rising 2 is probably one of the best zombie games ever. Gotta check it out. Awesome experience. And someday I'm gonna try to beat it. One of these days I'm gonna try to actually complete the game. You know. Coming in at number 20. Mortal Kombat, the Complete Edition. This one came out in 2012. This is basically just, you know, the complete version, or the final version of Mortal Kombat from 2011, or also known as Mortal Kombat 9. The official 9th installment in the main series. So this is the Complete Edition. This one came out in 2012. It basically has all the downloadable characters, all the extra characters and all that included in the disc already. So I have this version. Pretty fun game. I mean, one thing I'll give this title credit is this is probably the best fighting game that you can find overall on the PlayStation 3. And I would put this up again over the other fighting games that I mentioned before, over, you know, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Tekken Tag Tournament 2, and all the other good ones, like, you know, Virtua Fighter and Soul Calibur and all that stuff. This one is the best fighting game simply because it brought back fighting games in a fun way again. They were able to bring fighting games back. Mortal Kombat came back with this. It's almost like a resurgence of fighting games. It felt really exciting when this game came out because it was, not only was it critically acclaimed, it was just fun to play. The presentation was great. The cutscenes and the storyline was kind of, you know, pretty good for a fighting game. Playing through the different characters and the storyline mode, the female characters looks extra hot and super smoking hot. You know what I'm saying? So there's that sex appeal. There's a lot of blood and gore, and the fatalities are all there. Everything that made Mortal Kombat fun in the 90s, they really brought back and brought to the PS3 console. You know, as much as I like, you know, I thought like MK. Mortal Kombat versus, what is that, MK versus DCU? I thought that was alright. But with the complete edition, this one is the definitive Mortal Kombat experience. I mean, this one is just pure Mortal Kombat goodness, from the violence and the sex appeal and the storyline and the presentation. They really took their time to create a quality fighting game, and this one would be my choice for the best fighting game on the PlayStation 3. I mean, it is the highest ranking on this list. So number 20 is Mortal Kombat on the PS3. The complete edition. The complete edition, that's the one to get, because that's got all the characters. And I believe, from what I remember, the PS3 version, the one that I have, has Kratos as the as an additional exclusive character on the PS3. All right, coming in at number 19, Grand Theft Auto 5. This one came out in 2013. Oh boy, here we go. GTA 5. Man. And you guys know me, I've criticized the heck out of GTA 5. You know, I called it overrated and all that stuff. But that's the thing, is just because something is overrated doesn't mean that it's a bad game. It actually is one of the better games on the PS3. As far as the size of the game, the scope of the game, the actual gameplay, the third-person, you know, open-world element. There are a lot of things to do in GTA 5, all the way from you got side missions. You can do the one thing that I loved was that they included the Smuggler's Run, and you guys know how much I like Smuggler's Run. That's one of my best, one of my favorite PS2 games, and we never really got any more Smuggler's Run titles. I think they came out with a sequel back in the day on the PS2, but. So they kind of included a little Smuggler's Run, little side mission here in GTA 5. They got the, you know, the dune buggy and all that. So they had some kind of nod to an early title that they had from back in the early 2000s. So I thought that was really cool. The voice acting is pretty good. The characters are, of course, very, they stand out really well. They're very memorable. You know, all three of them, really. Franklin, Michael, and Trevor, you know, all three guys have their own unique personalities. And they're all committing crimes and getting paid a lot of money to do it. And they, you know, they got that gimmick where they transition between three different like characters depending on the mission. But I thought that was fun. I mean, it worked okay. You know, it felt like it did feel kind of gimmicky, but at the same time, it served its purpose as far as the storyline. They wanted to kind of present it with three different characters. I would still rather prefer you having a customizable thing, kind of like with the Saints Row series, but this isn't Saints Row. This is a Rockstar type of thing where they only focus on a single character or just a few protagonists at a time. So they don't really do that. You know, you can create your own character. That's not GTA. So I understand that, but at the same time, they got they got a soundtrack and all that. I wasn't like too impressed with the soundtrack. There was probably at least a couple of good songs in there that I thought was good, that really stood out for me. It's nothing in comparison to Vice City. I thought Vice City had the best soundtrack by far. It's the king. To this day, it still has the greatest GTA soundtrack ever. But GTA 5 soundtrack, I mean, it's not bad. You know, it's not like horrible or anything like that. They still have a few songs here and there. I just wish that they would update it, or not update it, but they actually included other genres in there instead of just the typical like predictable Rockstar patterns of like you know the stuff that the guys from Rockstar like. You can tell like it's the stuff that they like as opposed to a more the stuff that's current in 2013. Like I don't even remember them having any kind of EDM, dubsteppy, trapsteppy kind of songs. It's mostly just like traditional electronica, techno-ish kind of thing from like, you know, just traditional stuff, more old school stuff, and that's fine, but you know, that's one thing that kind of concerned me. GTA 5 though, still a solid one heck of a game, because there's so many things to do in this game. You can go to the strip club and watch actual, I mean, that's the best part. One of the best parts of the game is you can actually go to a strip bar or whatever, you know, and go to, you know, pay money to see these beautiful women doing a lap dance on you. I don't think they've ever really done that in the previous GTA titles. I mean, not that extensively. I believe you can do it with the older ones, with GTA 4 and episodes, but you can just kind of enter them, but you can't really have that specific lap dance segment. So that was cool. There's a portion in the game where I just basically played through. Like, I would make up my own games. I would stack up on weapons, on arsenal. I would stack up on missiles and rocket launchers and you know, weapons. And then I would just fire them in the middle of traffic, and then I would run away from the cops. I mean, that was my fun in the game. That's how I had fun. Was I just created my own missions and stuff. I would ride the train. I would attack. You know, I would attack a bunch of people in the middle of the street and blow up a bunch of cars, and then the stupid police would start chasing me, and then I would hop the train. I would climb on the train, and then just like escape, and that was kind of a fun little thing. And you know, there's fun to be had in GTA 5. You know what I'm saying? It is a fun experience. It's just that I think it got so overrated when it came out and overhyped that it kind of drowned out the actual merits of the game. Like, what really made it fun was certain things that you can do in the game that actually is legitimately exciting and enjoyable, and it is a pretty good looking game. Like, the graphics are pretty good for 2013. They're really, you know, it came out later in the PlayStation 3 lifespan, so you know, they were able to make the graphics even more, even better than the GTA 4 trilogy. So GTA 5, a solid installment. It's something that I think you should check out because it is fun and it is enjoyable, and it's a very long game. Coming in at number 18 is Batman Arkham City. This one came out in 2011. Arkham City is the sequel to Arkham Asylum. I believe that one came out in 2009. But with Arkham City, love the open world aspect of it. This is probably one of the best, if not the best, superhero slash comic book based video game on the PlayStation 3 console. This is just fun. I mean, this is just so cool because you get to play as Batman, the Dark Knight himself, and you are controlling him in this massive city. You know what I'm saying? In this giant world, this huge city. I believe it's Gotham City. You know what I'm saying? I believe it is Gotham. It's just that the Arkham Asylum prisoners, they escaped and now they're running amok the city. You know what I'm saying? So they're everywhere in Gotham and they basically set up shop there. And they're sort of controlling this massive dark city. And you have to basically, you know, kick their butts. You got to maneuver through it. You got to use the grappling hook, and you're gliding around the city and all that. Just a huge world. I mean, it really, you definitely feel like Batman in this game. I mean, this is the definitive like Batman experience. In many ways, this is the Spider-Man 2 of the PS3. I think what Spider-Man 2 did for the Spider-Man character on the PlayStation 2 console way back in the mid-2000s, and how that made you really feel like you're controlling Spider-Man in this huge city in Spider-Man 2. This is sort of the same thing that it did for the Batman character. It made you feel like you're in Gotham City. It made you feel like you're kicking criminal butts, and you are, you know, apprehending them, and you're taking them out one by one by one, and you're going up against these different villains and these classic DC villain evil characters, like a Penguin, like a Joker, and you know, so on and so forth. All these different characters that you have to fight against. That's classic DC, you know, territory here. So good stuff, really fun stuff. And my favorite part about this game, I never really like played it like super extensively. But my favorite memory of this game is back in 2014. I remember just one day, you know, I already had this game by then. I had the PS3 and Arkham City in 2014. I remember my mom was telling me just out of the blue, like I was in the living room and my mom says to me, "Hey, it's actually it's Batman's anniversary." I forgot if she said, I forgot if it was like the 70th anniversary of Batman, something like that. Like, it was some kind of anniversary related to the Batman. The Batman character has been around for like 70 or 60 years or something like that. And my mom was born in like the late 1950s. So she grew up on the Adam West classic Batman series. You know what I'm saying? So she was into that. That was like her childhood. You know what I'm saying? She grew up on the Adam West You know, with the intro, Batman, Batman, like that. I remember watching that when I was a kid in the early '90s, because they would show it on replay. But those were really old. That's a really old series, so I never really got into that. But that was my mom's childhood. That was like something from her when she was a kid back in the day. So she was, my mom is kind of a fan of Batman. Like, that's a part of her childhood. So Batman is probably one of her favorite, like, superhero characters. So I remember her telling me this, and it reminded me, like, oh yeah, my mom does like Batman. Like, she's a fan of the Batman character. So, and she's not a video game player, she's never, like, really played video games. She's a child of the 60s. She's a 60s kid. So she never grew up on video games, you know what I'm saying? Like, when she was growing up in the 60s and 70s, she was never around video games the way that we were in the 1990s. So when she mentioned this to me, I'm like, all right, I'm going to make her play Arkham City. And so that's what I did. I brought up, I hooked up the PS3 to the TV, and she's like, what the heck is that? What the hell's going on? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, Mom, you gotta check this out. Mom, you gotta check out this game. And I show her the CD case of, not the CD case, the Blu-ray case of the game, Arkham City. And she reads it. She's like, Arkham City, huh? Like, oh, I thought it was Gotham City. Like, isn't it Gotham? So she didn't understand the whole Arkham Asylum thing that was going on in the game. So, all right, you'll find out. We'll figure it out. So I fire up the PS3. So we're sitting in the living room, and I give her the controller. I give her the controller, the PS3 controller. She's holding on to it, and the game starts, right? And so you have Batman, and he's walking through the I think it was the prison system where he's handcuffed and all that, and he's just like in the prison and he's escaping it. It was just a really fun little moment, and my mom like experiencing it and her reaction. This was something that I probably should have recorded. Like, I should have recorded her reaction to playing Batman for like the first time, like Arkham City for the first time, because she's a fan of the franchise and she's never played the PS3. And even like her little reactions to the little things, like she'd be holding the PS3 controller, the DualShock 3, and the way that it would vibrate, like it would vibrate as when Batman is doing something, and you know how the action is on the PS3, the controller would vibrate, and my mom would be like, "Oh, holy crap!" Like, the controller moves, like it vibrates, like holy crap, like that. Even that surprised her, you know what I mean? So those little things that made that moment really special for me, like wow, that was pretty cool. Like, I got to actually play a video game with my mom, who isn't a gamer at all. She's a lot older than me. She comes from a very different generation in the 60s and early 70s. And so that was a cool little moment, and I just wanted to share that because Arkham City, man, that's Batman, one of the best Batman games, and I'm gonna remember that for the rest of my life. That was pretty fun. Yeah, because she'd be playing it, and she doesn't know how to really play it, so she's just kind of like mashing buttons, and she's getting her butt kicked by the enemies. They'd start ganging up on her, but the way that she reacted was pretty fun. Like, she'd be like, she would laugh at certain moments, like, oh, that was pretty funny, or it felt like a real Batman experience, and so that must have been a pretty cool thing for her. Alright, number 17. Number 17 is Eco in Shadow of the Colossus collection. This was the HD Classics collection. I already talked about how much I love Shadow of the Colossus, one of the best games on the PS2. Eco is also a solid title. Not as good as Shadow of the Colossus, obviously, but still kind of a quirky game in its own right, and it is a quality game. This one came out in 2011. The Classics HD on the PS3. I mean, I know it's 2 games, but it's on a single disc, so you gotta have it anyway. You gotta buy this Blu-ray collection. You know what I'm saying? It's on a single disc, and you get to play both games. Just enjoyable, man. I had 2 classic PS2 titles on a single Blu-ray experience, and it's an HD remastered. Man, what an... And also, like with Eco, not a lot of people played Eco. So I mostly bought this. I already got through Shadow of the Colossus on the PS2, so I wanted to buy it for the eco experience. So I ended up just getting it for one game, but having both of them in a single package is just awesome. Eco was fun. Shadow of the Colossus is a classic, of course. So, and then in beautiful HD PS3 HDMI graphics. So what more can you ask for? Two of the better games on the PlayStation 2, and you know, what an experience. Shadow of the Colossus, one of the best titles, so you can't go wrong. Even if it is old games, just because it's old doesn't make it bad. Just because it's old, you know, especially if you never played it on the PS2. If you never experienced it, now you get a chance to do it on the PS3. Fun stuff. Love it. It's a classic. Alright. Number 16 is another collection. This one, number 16, is God of War Saga. The God of War Saga came out in 2012. This was basically all 5 games, the 5 God of War games that were released at the time. So you had God of War 1, God of War 2, God of War 3. Those were 2 separate discs. So God of War 1 and 2 is on disc 1, God of War 3 is on disc 2, and then you have the voucher to be able to download Chains of Olympus and the Ghost of Sparta. Although I believe in Central America or South America, somewhere in the Latin American region, you can get all 3 games, or not all 3 games, but all 5 games on three separate physical discs. That might be because of downloading issues and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not entirely sure why it was only limited to the Latin American area. Maybe because of downloading issues, you know, some kind of maybe network connections and things like that. Maybe that's something that might be. That's why they included it in 3 separate discs, as opposed to the one that we got in North America and, you know, everywhere else, where we only have 2 discs, and we have to download the other ones. But that's fine, you know, being able to download, is still part of the package. Chains of Olympus, Ghost of Sparta, the games that came out on the PSP. God of War, I mean, what else can I say about God of War? One of the best franchises, one of the best exclusives on the PS3. Really fun stuff. Pretty much all the games have been really, really good. Like, solid experiences, fun action adventure, very sexy, very enjoyable to play, very easy to learn, but it can be quite challenging if you know, increase the difficulty. So I love the God of War series. God of War 2 is my personal favorite out of all of them. So just for God of War 2 alone, like, this is already a classic collection. And, you know, even something like the God of War collection, the one that just has God of War 1 and God of War 2, not even including the other games. I mean, even that one would be enough to include in this list as a replacement. You know what I'm saying? So, but God of War Saga, this one is the first 5 official console games, and this one came out in 2012 as the big giant collection. It's a must-have for sure if you love fun video games, because this, you know, love God of War. Great music, great soundtrack, great gameplay, great voice acting. I mean, everything is just on point. Number 15, another compilation. Number 15 is Prince of Persia Trilogy, the Classics HD collection from 2011. I love this trilogy. I got it on the PS3. Another fun set of games from the old school PS2 era. You have Sands of Time, you have Warrior Within, you have Two Thrones. So you have 3 great platforming type of experience from the Prince of Persia 3D legacy. Great stuff here. I mean, all 3 games are kind of unique in their own right. Sands of Time is more light-hearted and comedic and just more of a Disney-style thing. Very charming. The second one, Warrior Within, is a little bit more darker edge, a little bit more emo, with more kind of a hard rock soundtrack and sexy female characters, but a little bit darker. Still very fun gameplay, fun platforming. And Two Thrones is kind of rounds it out and balances it out with the multiple personality. You know, you got the Dark Prince gameplay and the melee style gameplay and all that, and it still is a very fun segments, fun platforming, cool stage designs. I mean, you know, just fun stuff, man. A Prince of Persia trilogy, I cannot say enough good things about it. Really enjoy the heck out of these 3 games, and it's so cool to have them in the HD remastered version on the PlayStation 3. Gotta have all 3 games. Great stuff. Coming in at number 14 is Unreal Tournament 3. This one came out way back in 2007. I can't believe this game is 10 years old now, a whole decade. Unreal Tournament, you know, I never really grew up in it back in the day. When I was in high school in the early 2000s, I heard so many good things about it. So Unreal Tournament 3 was kind of my first experience with the Unreal franchise, and I really enjoyed the heck out of it. It took me a while to kind of get into it. The campaign really isn't much. There's really not much you can say about the campaign. The single player like story mode, it's not. There's really nothing there. But what really makes it fun is basically the multiplayer death matches and capture the flags. That's what really makes it fun, because that's what it's all about. It's the tournament experience, the multiplayer experience, where you have multiple, different enemies, and you basically have to defeat these enemies, and it's just a fun, arcadey, very fast-paced, very exciting. I just love it, man. Oh God, this game is so fun, especially in that multiplayer deathmatch experience and the capture the flag. I mean, it's just so challenging, because it's quite easy with the lower difficulty, but when you really challenge yourself and you really increase the difficulty, I mean, you might as well be playing with real life people here. You know, you don't even need like multiplayer, like online thing where you got to play with real life human beings. You can do that, but this is, you can just do it against the CPU, and they can be really difficult. They can be incredibly challenging to beat. So you're gonna get your butt kicked many times, but it's just so fun. I love to capture the flag, especially on that stage. It's kind of like an oriental looking influence stage where you're jumping around. Oh my God, man. Awesome stuff. It just feels so satisfying when you score and when you win and when you defeat the enemies. It's just so fast-paced. It's so chaotic. It's so you got to be quick on your toes. You can't be a bum when it comes to this fighting game experience. You got to be very good at fighting. Not fighting games. First-person shooters, I should say. You can't be a bum at FPS. First-person shooters. You got to be really good at it. You got to be adept at it. You got to have a lot of experience with FPS in order to really get good at the higher difficulty. And it's just really satisfying to play. This is the kind of game that I can keep playing again and again and again for years and years and years to come, because the replay value, it's always like something you want to keep playing again and again, because it just doesn't end. Like, the fun never ends with Unreal Tournament. Alright, number 13. Number 13 is Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. This one came out in 2009. Out of the Uncharted series, this one is my favorite. So between the first one, Uncharted 1 from 2007, Uncharted 2, and Uncharted 3, Uncharted 3, which was a pretty good game too. I think Uncharted 3 was probably the weakest out of the trilogy, the initial first 3 games. Uncharted 1 I thought was a pretty good first installment, but it is very dated in terms of like graphics and its engine, the way that it looks. Uncharted 2 I thought was a nice balance where it has really good graphics. It's got that 2009 graphics as opposed to the 2006, 2007 graphics of the first Uncharted 1. The storyline I think was also a little bit better. The stages were a little bit cooler looking. Uncharted 2 I think was just a fun experience. It's like a movie come to life. It's like Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, all that fun like action adventure experience and platforming experience. That's just it's classic like Sucker Punch, jumping around. Not Sucker Punch. What is it? What's the people that developed this? I don't think. I'm sorry. It's not Sucker Punch. It's from the people that created. I think the Jack and Daxter. I think that's the people that made it. So Uncharted 2, great fun stuff. The main character himself, I think his name is Drake, Nathan Drake. He's quite likable. He's like the everyman. He's very athletic. He gets all the girls and all that. So he's a very cool like main character. It's a third-person shooter too. Like you're shooting a lot of enemies and bad guys and things like that. But just the environment is really cool. The stages are really cool, and the enemies are pretty like interesting, and it just takes you to a different world. It takes you to different like places. It's a movie come to life. I mean, it's the closest thing to a real like Indiana Jones experience. I mean, I really can't stress that enough. It's kind of the same thing. But in video game format, and very exciting as well. Number 12. Number 12 is Grand Theft Auto 4, GTA 4, the complete edition. This one came out in 2010. Now, this is basically a compilation, so another collection of titles, but this is all three GTA 4 installments. So you have GTA 4, the one from 2008, and then the bonus episodic content that came out later on. I think those ones came out in 2009. This is the complete edition, though. This was episodes from Liberty City, and also the first GTA 4 title with Nico Bellic. So you have the Nico Bellic storyline, you got the one with Luis, and you got the one with the biker gang Lost and Damned. Overall, just a fun experience. I quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it, probably a little bit better than GTA 5, simply because it's set in New York, so that's a little bit fresh. I like the whole Liberty City thing. I like the sniper mode a little bit better than GTA 5. With GTA 5, it wasn't quite as fun, but the sniper mode here in GTA 4, it's just so fun to snipe people, especially when you're at seaside. You go to a right beside the ocean, and you just kind of wait for people riding the stupid yachts, and not the yachts, but like the boats, the motor boats and stuff like that. They would be riding it, and you just aim at them with that awesome sniper, and then boom, take them out, and then you could see their bodies collapse. They just fall off, and then you could see the motorboat just slowly stop, and it's just so freaking fun. I love that. And then I would swim out. Yeah, I would actually go into water and then swim all the way to the boat and steal it, and end up driving around with the boat. So GTA 4, pretty decent story. Between them, I mean, they're all intertwined anyway. So I kind of put them all in the same storyline, the same kind of plot line. They're just kind of intertwined. It's kind of like the gimmick is that Nico Bellic is sort of interacting a little bit with some of these characters that you can find in the other episodes. They're all kind of intertwined somehow. But they're all basically trying to get money, trying to get rich, trying to get some kind of notoriety in the criminal, seedy underbelly of the gangsterism, New York, and all that stuff. A lot of shooting, a lot of third-person shooting and action and weapons and guns. It doesn't have the same sexy, lap dance, sex appeal of GTA 5. It's not quite as sexualized as that. But with GTA 4, I think it's just more. I don't know if it's because I played it first. And that's my impression of GTA 4 over GTA 5. Like GTA 5 felt like more of the same thing, and GTA 4 is like it was my new experience into the HD GTA games. Like I enjoyed Vice City and San Andreas and all that, but with GTA 4 coming out and episodes, they were like the first HD experience with the newer graphics at that time. I mean, they look very dated now, especially GTA 4. And GTA 5 has overall better looking graphics, but I mean, it's not bad. Like Ballad of Gay Tony, it looks pretty good. You know what I'm saying? Ballad of Gay Tony actually looks significantly better than GTA 4. So the graphics aren't like that bad. The soundtrack is pretty decent too. Like the voiceovers are pretty good. Funny radio personalities, funny little radio bits and stuff like that really bring it to life. And the weapons are pretty cool. After a while, you get like missile, rocket launchers and things like that, and you get to actually enjoy it a little bit more. And it's just fun making up your own thing. Kind of like with GTA 5, I just make up my own little mini games. I'll fire in the middle of the crowd, blow up a bunch of cars, and then have the stupid police chasing me on a motorcycle, and I would just ride around everywhere. I would just try to escape and just try to like do my best to stay alive. So that's a fun experience. So GTA 4, I mean, it's something that you just got to check out because it is such a massive world in the middle of this New York influenced city. All right, number 11. Number 11 is Assassin's Creed 2. Came out in 2009. I quite enjoyed Assassin's Creed 2. This is my personal favorite out of all of them. I think Assassin's Creed 2, A Creed 2 is the best in the A Creed series. There's been a few really good ones. I mean, I thought Revelations, was pretty good. Like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was also pretty good. But this one is probably the best out of all of them, simply because it was such an improvement over the first one. the first one had so much hype, the one that came out in 2007, A Creed 1, and they had so much buzz around it, like, oh, it's a new IP, yada, yada, yada. But it was kind of disappointing, it was very repetitive, not a bad game, not a terrible game, but just very derivative, very tedious after a while. But with A Creed 2, a couple of years later, they improved it so much, improved gameplay, improved missions, better pacing, the storyline was more fleshed out. And there was more things to do. Like the missions actually felt fun. You didn't feel like it was too stagnant or boring. So A Creed 2 I thought was like the pinnacle of the series at that point. Brotherhood was not too bad, and Revelations was a change of scenery. But A Creed 2 was the one that really improved it and made it like a really good like Game of the Year contender in 2009. I really enjoyed Assassin's Creed 2. Awesome experience. Number 10. Number 10 is Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. This one came out in 2008. I really thought this game was a quality title. I mean, this is probably like, it's one of those games that everybody hypes up, got so much acclaim, that actually lived up to the hype. Like, it lived up to the buzz and all the critical acclaim. And I'm not even like a big Metal Gear Solid fan. You know what I mean? I enjoyed the first one on the PS1. I thought it was all right. The second one, I think I have Subsistence. I think one of those ones on the PS2, Metal Gear Solid 2. So I kind of liked it. It's just that I wasn't like crazy about it. But with Metal Gear Solid 4, the cutscenes were really extensive. You have 20-minute cutscenes here, which made it feel like a movie. You're watching this really long movie, this really long cinematic. But the gameplay itself, the very few times that you actually get to play the game, it's very fun, very enjoyable. I love sneaking around like some kind of weird snake on the floor, and basically stealth. It's a stealth game, and you're trying to maneuver your way around these enemies. It's been a while since I've played it. I think the last time I played this game was like 2010, so it's been like 7 years. I haven't played it in a long time. I still have the game, but, I haven't played it in many, many years. So maybe the graphics are a little bit dated. It is 2008 graphics. It looks a little bit too grayish. Not grayish, but brownish in color. That sepia tone from the mid-2000s look. But, it's still quite detailed. Good voice acting. Awesome storyline, cool characters, and the gameplay is pretty solid given the very limited gameplay compared to the amount of cinematics that you. It's just a well-presented video game. It's something that you gotta check out. A great exclusive. 2008 was a heck of a year for the PS3. What an awesome title. Number 9. Number 9 is the Mass Effect Trilogy. This one came out in 2012. Really, the only reason why I included this was because of Mass Effect 2. I'm a big fan of Mass Effect 2, but this one also includes the first Mass Effect, I believe, the original Mass Effect. That one, I want to say, came out in 2007. And then Mass Effect 2 came out in 2011, and then Mass Effect 3, which came out a little bit later. I never actually got into Mass Effect 3, but Mass Effect 2 itself, just because it's included here. And the first one was actually pretty fun, too. The first Mass Effect, even though I never really beat it or got too far with it. I got it on the Xbox 360, though. But this one has all three installments. It's a trilogy, and even just by Mass Effect 2 alone, I really love Mass Effect 2. I mean, very cyberpunk type of experience. You can see like influences from stuff like Blade Runner, those kind of that kind of movie, that early 80s cyberpunk experience with cyborgs and androids, and the whole spaceship travel thing, where it's like the idea of going to a different planet and that there's different things to do and different like cities to explore. That's what this game is. It's just awesome, very stylish. Fun gameplay. Like the third-person mode, third-person shooter mode is actually quite fun and quite enjoyable. It's a little bit more action-oriented. From what I believe, it became a little bit more action-heavy, third-person shooter-heavy, as opposed to the more traditional like RPG, I guess. But I mean, that's just the evolution of console RPGs. You're bound to have more action-style gameplay than like a PC-style RPG experience. I really love Mass Effect 2, man. I was never able to really complete it or beat it because I think I got stuck at a certain area where I couldn't. It was like a glitch. like I couldn't advance because of some stupid glitch. Like I was at a place where I had to go inside a. Well, I don't want to drag you through it, but needless to say, I quite enjoy the heck out of Mass Effect 2. So just for that alone, and this is the trilogy again. The first one, really good game. The second one, I really loved it. And the third one, I mean, I've never really tried it, but I mean, it is part of the package. So, just love Mass Effect. I like the characters, the interaction between them, the relationships between them, the bonds between them. I guess there's some kind of like romance between the characters. You can develop them. I love the Jack character. You know, the chick with the bald chick or shaved chick with the tattoos and stuff. You know, she's kind of up my alley as far as like the she's hot or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I kind of like her. I don't know. She's very charismatic, but it's just fun, man. I mean, these characters feel real. You know, they feel like somebody that's. It's not just your one-dimensional characters. They feel like they exist. They feel like they're somebody that you can interact with in this world. And the graphics are pretty good. The little environments and the different worlds and different planets that you explore is pretty cool. All right, number 8. Number 8 is Infamous from 2009. Awesome game. This is one of the most fun titles on the PlayStation 3 by far. This was the first Infamous installment, though, from 09. I thought Infamous was way better than Infamous 2. You know, when Infamous 2 came out, I was excited, but Infamous 2 was kind of disappointing, actually. But with the first one, very good. They really pretty much perfected it. I mean, this was one of the best games of 2009. Great graphics for the time. Pretty good gameplay. I love like jumping around and climbing the little buildings and stuff. You're like a superhero. You got these superpowers. You got these electricity coming out of your hands. You're fighting these enemies that's kind of strange looking. It's just fun. I mean, you feel like a complete badass with this video game. You feel like a complete like superhero or a supervillain, because it depends. It's one of these games to have a morality system. But the gameplay is fun enough where you just want to keep going and going all the way up to the end, all the way up to the end, all the way up to the you want to complete the storyline. You want to complete and beat it all the way up to the ending credits and all that. You want to see what happens in the end. Yeah, your character gets stronger over time. He learns new skills and new moves and things like that. And I just love exploring the city. I love gliding through the electric line or whatever it's called. What do you call it? The line, the electric lines that connect the electricity through the city. The thingamajiggy. But yeah, it's just fun, and the way that he glides it and he charges up, gets the electricity and all that, it is really, really cool. And I don't know. It's almost like, well, not Spider-Man, but it's kind of like a little bit of Incredible Hulk, Ultimate Destruction. Not quite. A little bit of that mixed with a little bit of like Sly. When you're Sly the character and you're, the sucker punch thing where you're jumping on top of a platform, but it does it automatically. Your character gets positioned automatically on a platform. Yeah, this is just a solid experience. Very good exclusive on the PS3, and it's a shame that the sequel, Infamous 2, was not nearly as fun as the first one. Alright, number 7. Number 7 is Dead Space 2. This one came out in 2011. One of the best sequels on the PS3. I believe it came out in multiplats, came out in different systems, but this one is the follow-up to the original Dead Space. I really enjoyed Dead Space 2. This is one of the best sequels. It takes place in a different setting. This time, this one, it's not set in a space mining facility. In the first Dead Space, you're just kind of set up in this single environment, in this single. I mean, it's a massive mining ship. So it's a massive stage basically, and you're fighting these alien creature monsters. But with Dead Space 2, I believe you're in a different location. You're like you're somewhere else. It's like you're I remember being in actual places where humans actually live. It's like a little mini city kind of thing that has shopping malls and I should say like grocery stores and stuff like that, and tenements and buildings and apartment buildings where people actually live. Dead Space 2, fun stuff. It's creepier. it's even more. You feel even more isolated because, ironically, you are in a big. You're in a place that is supposed to be like a city, but it's infested by these monster alien creatures. So you're still isolated because a lot of people are already. They're gone. They're dead, and so you're basically by yourself, and you gotta go through you gotta go through like the subway system. I remember that one part where you're walking through the subway area, and that's where the train is supposed to be, but it's really creepy because there's there's alien creatures. There's the Dead Space monsters that's out to try to destroy you and eat you alive and just kill you. Dead Space 2, fun game. I mean, it's just a great continuation and a great follow-up to the original Dead Space. This one came out in 2011. I can't say enough good things about the sequel. Dead Space 2, awesome game, great follow-up. It's one of the best games. It's number 7. One of the best sequels on the PlayStation 3. Number 6. Number 6 is Bioshock 2. Came out in 2010. This one came out in early 2010, the sequel to Bioshock, the first Bioshock, the classic game. Awesome. Awesome title. I enjoyed the heck out of it. There's a little bit of a difference here. You are exploring basically the same city, so it's kind of like rehashing the same environment almost, but this time around, it's a little bit different in that there's a new enemy. There's a new enemy type, which is the Big Sister. The Big Sister is this really difficult enemy that it's kind of like kind of like the Big Daddy character, but faster and more deadly. You know what I mean? It's like a really strong character. So you gotta fight your way through the Big Sisters every now and then. I believe you're the Big Daddy throughout this whole game. You know what I'm saying? So you are the Big Daddy character throughout the entire thing, as opposed to the first one. And yeah, a really good sequel. Pretty decent storyline. I guess that maybe in some ways it's a little bit kind of forced, or just a little bit like I can't believe they went that route where there's like additional things to do, but they kind of force it in, like, oh, you gotta go back to Rapture. Like, really? You've been to Rapture already? You already went through the whole thing. You've seen the environments in the first one, and then you gotta go through it again in Bioshock 2. So it feels kind of like a derivative of the same environment. But that being said, it's really awesome to explore it again. It's really cool to kind of see the different sides of Rapture and see it in a different way, and then just a great follow-up. Because the first Bioshock was so good, and then now you got the sequel, which is just as good in terms of gameplay, with even more enemy types. So and the different weapons and abilities that you could use in Bioshock 2 is just as fun and exciting to kind of tinker around and experiment what kind of different weapons that you can do, and different combination attacks that you can do in this game.
It is relatively easy. I mean, I will say that as far as challenge and the difficulty, you will die a lot against the Big Sisters, because they can be quite tough to defeat. They're like super bosses, very tough enemies to go up against. But the thing with Bioshock, especially Bioshock 2, I should say, is that you constantly respawn so much, and it's just a natural thing for you to get defeated. Your character gets vanquished, and then you just return. You just automatically return and go back, and you respawn right next, right near, right near the boss fight where you're supposed to battle the character, because the checkpoints are so frequent in this game, and you respawn right up to the last checkpoint that you ended up in. And so it does get quite easy, and it's just really, really quick. And it's almost like there's no punishment almost when even if you get defeated by an enemy, and you end up kicking the bucket, and you end up basically getting owned by the enemies, and so you're gone. They take your life, but your character is immediately back on top of things, like nothing even really happened. Like there's no consequence when you get owned in this game. If anything, you just keep coming back again and again and again, and it's so easy to just progress through the entire game in a matter of hours, really. If you decide to sit down and play BioShock 2 for, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours straight, you can probably get all the way up to pretty much the end, and without much without much difficulty. So I think that's one negative thing that I can say, is that it's a little too easy, in that it's not, it doesn't punish you enough, even if you do get owned by the enemy, and it's a little bit tougher to get rid of the enemy and fight them. BioShock 2 is still a great game, though. I mean, it's still an awesome experience, and much like the first one, stylistically sound presentation. The storyline is, it still has that a little bit of mystique from the first one. Still has that little bit of that, I guess you could say, like 1960s, early 60s, mid 60s novelty of, like, the old timey music and all that. The aesthetics of the Rapture's design, and the illustrations and the animations and things like that. It just has an old school feel to it, much like the initial BioShock, and that's the charming part of it. And so it's a great sequel, and man, I'm definitely gonna miss this level of quality when it comes to single player campaigns, and especially in first person shooters. I mean, this is an FPS game that they really take their time to create an awesome sequel. All right, number 5. WWE 2K14. This one came out in 2013. 2K14 is one of those games that, if you're not a wrestling fan, if you're not into WWE, if you're not into pro wrestling at all, then you're not even going to care about this game. Much like if you're not a fan of the NFL or football, then you're not going to care about the Madden games. And so with 2K14, though, I am a big wrestling fan, and I played this game for like 2 years straight. That's how fun and that's how good this game is. From 2014, I got it like in around spring 2014, and the only reason why I bought it was because I heard that it was a little bit faster paced than the previous WWE games. For many years, when they started getting around the SmackDown vs. Raw series in the mid 2000s, the WWE games were never the same. They weren't as fast anymore, and they weren't as arcadey, but they took away a lot of the speed, and it became a lot more simulator heavy. So I got back into it with 2K14 because I heard that it was a little bit faster paced, a little bit more speed to it. You could actually speed up the gameplay, and you can set the gameplay speed to epic, which is actually, it's relatively fast. It's not too fast like in the late 90s, where you had WCW Revenge and all those games from Aki, THQ, where the characters moved incredibly fast back in those days during the N64 era. This is a little bit more. It's not a bad speed. It's actually it's not too slow like the SmackDown vs. Raw simulator series. There is a little bit more. The characters move a little bit faster than that. And with 2K14, I also like the presentation. I was just pleasantly surprised by how good this game was. It's not a perfect wrestling game by any means. I don't think there's any perfect, awesome, completely 100% 10 out of 10 wrestling game out there. It's never been created. I mean, we can say good things about other titles like a No Mercy, like a Here Comes the Pain, and all that. But with 2K14, I thought this game was the best wrestling game I've played in many, many years, probably since Here Comes the Pain, and since the late 90s, because it has a huge roster. It's got tremendous amount of moves, the amount of freedom that you have in this game, and the customized options and create a wrestler is really varied. You do feel like there's a lot less handcuffs, because I played the SmackDown vs. Raw series during the PS2 era, and I felt very handcuffed so much in those games. They were all right as far as gameplay, but there was a lot of things that you couldn't do in those games. But in 2K14, you can create your own championship, not just for the men, but for the women as well. So, and there was a lot more freedom for the female wrestlers, the actual divas, as they called them back then. You can actually create championships for them, whether it's tag team and heavyweight, and not heavyweight, but singles titles, singles and tag titles for the female as well. So you can have, I mean, I created my own, my own cause and everything. I had my own leagues and all that. So for 2 years straight, I just played with really a majority female division, because I thought it was, it's something that I've never really been accustomed to. You don't see it that much on the main WWE shows, especially back then during the the 2000s and the 2010s. We didn't get much like female wrestling, and especially like there was a lot of horrible female wrestling. So at least with 2K14, I was able to create these fictional cause and these female characters. I was able to bring them to life, so to speak, and make them kind of look like credible champions. Gave them the world championship and all that, and tag team championship alongside the male wrestlers. Now, the females and the male wrestlers can't fight each other. They can't go up against each other. It's not like back in the old days, in the early 2000s. There is more of a separation between the two. It's definitively like, okay, you got the male division, and then you got the female division. And this game does have a lot of glitches. I mean, like I said, it's not perfect. It's got tons of different like little glitches. The game will freeze every now and then. There's going to be some artifacts sometimes. It's just like little errors and little glitches in the game, and even like certain issues, like freezing issues. Sometimes it doesn't load properly. But overall, it still has a lot more positives than negatives, especially with the updated. You got the full patch. You download like the rest of the moves and everything. You got to spend more money to get the rest of the moves here, and add even more moves to the arsenal of the wrestlers. And so you got to spend a little bit more money to get the full complete experience here. But at the same time, I think it's worth it. I played it for 2 years straight. You know what I mean? Almost every week I was playing this game. And so it was something that I kept going back to, because it was enjoyable enough to want to keep playing it, and championships and customized championship title matches, and have my own like little league of these different cause. So that was incredibly fun. And I think out of all the wrestling games that came out on the PS3, you can't go wrong with 2K14. I mean, this one has a great roster, big roster, all the way from Goldberg and Lesnar and Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold and The Rock, all these legends. I think Macho Man is also there, Bret Hart, and classic like versions of Shawn Michaels, and so many different legends. Awesome stuff here. The only one huge gripe that I had was the fact that it didn't have that many female wrestlers. I think it only had like 9. Or maybe not 9, like 7 or 8 female wrestlers. I think so. It's not that many, and most of them are the female wrestlers that's not even really that good. You know what I mean? Like they have a really crappy version of Stephanie McMahon. I think they only have like one legend. Like they only have Lita in there. I guess you could say Stephanie's also a legend, but I mean she's not really a. She's not an established diva the way that Lita is. And as far as the main like wrestlers that they had, I mean, they had like AJ Lee, Oksana, and Caitlyn. I mean, these names are gone now. These women left like by the time that I got this game in 2014. A couple of these women were already like out of the WWE, like especially like Caitlyn. Oksana was on her way out. AJ Lee was on her way out. There's Natalia, Natty, and like a couple of the Bella Twins are there, and Summer Rae. So that's a handful, not really a lot compared to the woman now. But I mean, it's just a matter of timing, I guess. So that gripe aside, still great customization. I can't praise the custom CAW options enough. You can create your own arenas, create your own logos. You have even more detailed characters and CAWs, and customize your own entrance music, which they ended up taking away in the later installments. So, 2K14, a tremendous game, despite all the glitches. Number 4, BioShock. BioShock came out originally. This one came out in 2007, I believe, for the Xbox 360 and all that. But it came out eventually on the PS3 in 2008. This was the first installment in the BioShock series. Awesome game. I mean, this is one of the best first-person shooters ever especially with a single-player campaign. This is more of a single-player, FPS with a more focus on single-player storytelling, much like a Half-Life, like Half-Life back in the day. Incredible setting. I love Rapture in the first BioShock, exploring it for the first time, getting introduced to the characters, the big daddies, the little sisters. I mean, it was also charming and it was very charismatic and very interesting, very immersive, I should say. Just an immersive world, this almost surreal environment of like early 60s. Although I guess the city of Rapture was around for much longer, because it is a sunken city, I guess, or not a sunken city, but a city underwater in a bubble dome, basically. And so it has that charm of I guess like 1930s or 1940s, like old school, like old timey, back in the day kind of thing, like from the early 1900s. It's got the old music. It's got the like Fallout music kind of thing, like old time radio kind of music. It's got the just classic aesthetics, the cartoon designs and all that. So stylish, very cool environments, good graphics. Like even to this day, it still looks pretty good. Like as far as the art design and all that, and the character models, it still looks pretty good, just because of the distinctive, like unique looking environments and the art design. The music is good, of course. Just a tremendous game, man. BioShock is one of my favorites of all time. I know a lot of people have said, like, some people will say this is overrated. Oh, it's overrated, it's overrated. I can understand that. Not everybody's going to be into the same games. But for me, I mean, I immediately got it. I immediately enjoyed it. The first time I played this game was back in 2010. So it's been well over 7 years, probably almost 8 years now. But the game is like 10 years old, and it still is one of my favorites. Like, it's still one of the best FPS games I've ever experienced because of everything I just mentioned. Great music, great graphics, environment, cool characters. I love the charming, like the little sisters. I love saving them. Just this concept of saving these little innocent girls, really, but they're kind of like, I don't know if they're just brainwashed or something's wrong with them, where they they're protected by the big daddy, but they have to harness the thing from the corpses, the red liquid or fluid. So it's creepy, it's creepy and just morbid all at the same time, but just in a very charming way, in a very endearing, like when you save the little sisters and what happens at the end when you're fighting the final boss. If you decide to save enough of the little sisters, that was just so cool. I like the ending. I actually like the ending of BioShock. I thought it was a good, like, happy ending. So just an overall great experience. It was like a movie. It was like a movie, but even better because you get to actually experience it by yourself, and you explore these environments firsthand, like first person. So, love BioShock. Number 3 is Saints Row 2. The second Saints Row came out in 2008. Oh my god. Saints Row 2, in my opinion, in terms of gameplay, is better than any of the GTA open world style third-person crime shooters. So anything that's like a GTA clone or like a GTA type game, Saints Row 2 to me is the best, not just out of the Saints Row series, but it's the best out of that whole genre of like GTA, Sleeping Dogs, Mercenaries, all that where you're in a big city, Scarface, Godfather, all that stuff, Mafia, where you're in a big city and you go inside, you hijack people's cars, you're riding around these vehicles and cars, you're playing the radio, you're shooting at people with guns and firearms and stuff like that, and it's like a crime game, like you're part of a gang. Saints Row 2 to me is the pinnacle of that style, that gameplay. It's just an awesome experience. The gameplay is what really sets it apart. It's just a fun, really fun, addictive game to play. It's still one of the best games I've ever experienced. I enjoyed like Vice City and San Andreas on the PS2, and then I got Saints Row 2 on the PS3. I was like, holy crap! Like, this is even better. It's even more like things that you can do because you got the multiple allies. You can recruit fellow like gang members to your team, so you got like 4 people instead of just like 1 person. I mean, I guess you can do that with the other one to a certain degree, but with Saints Row 2 you really feel like an actual crew, like an actual gang. It's much easier to access missions. You can replay the missions over and over again, and some of those missions can be really, really fun. Especially the one where you're shooting behind the thing, like where you're riding the motorcycle, or the vehicle, I should say, and you're shooting from behind when you're doing I think it's a drug delivery. You're doing drug deliveries and stuff. So that's really fun. The vehicles, riding the vehicles feels really easy to. Just the controls are really quick and easy. You don't feel, it doesn't feel too flimsy, especially when you're riding on a motorcycle kind of thing. Customization is also really important. You get to create your own characters, which GTA has never really like fully explored. I mean, there's a little bit of that, like you can change a hairstyle, a couple of clothing articles, but with Saints Row 2 you can change anything. I mean, getting a mohawk, choosing a female character, creating a fat guy, a skinny guy, like all kinds of different. There's so many different varieties in Saints Row 2 as far as like what character you want to choose and play as. All the way from looks and clothing types, and so many different like clothing attires. You could look like a goth person. You could look like some hip hop dude, just a regular dude in the business suit, somebody who's wearing just regular street clothes. I mean, all kinds of different clothing. Just the customization in Saints Row 2 is just there's a lot of variety there that other third-person open world shooters don't offer. The storyline is just, it's kind of it's kind of an okay story. It's just, fighting off against the evil political government military kind of thing, and so you're the big gang, and you got to fight off, and you got to sort of conquer this whole I guess pretty much all of the territory, not just the Saints Row area or the Saints Row district, but you got to try to conquer the entire city. And it's good. I mean, it's just a fun experience and taking over everything. And man, I had more fun with this game than any of the other like open world like third-person shooters. I mean, this is the one to play. This is the one to have. Granted, it does look dated. I mean, it carries over from the first Saints Row, and it sort of has the same outdated like 2006, 2007 graphics. The graphics got a little bit better with Saints Row 3 and Saints Row 4 because there's a little bit more like detail to them. I think they worked on it with a different engine, but this one, even though the graphics are dated, even though it does look a little bit outdated, and there are some glitches in this game. Like I remember this game freezing quite a lot, especially when I got up to that ship stage later on, where you have to fight the helicopters. It started to freeze like crazy, but I didn't have a patch version back then, so but the fact that it has glitches and it does look a little bit dated, it still doesn't mean that it's a bad game. I mean, it really is one of the best titles and single player experiences I've ever had. I mean, this game has everything. Fun missions. That's the best way I can put this game in, is that it had really, really fun missions, and it was just a fun, lighthearted, comedic game. Not lighthearted, but comedic. The sense of humor in this game is a lot more. It's more satirical and even more of a parody than the satire of Grand Theft Auto. Alright, number 2. Number 2 is Dead Space. Dead Space, another game from 2008. So we have like 3 games already in a row. Like in the top 4, we got 3 games from 2008. Although you could say like BioShock was originally from 2007, but it did come out in 2008 for the PS3. So Dead Space. This one dropped way back in 2008. I remember when this came out, there was a lot of buzz behind this game. But this is legitimately probably the best like survival horror type of video game I've ever experienced. This was even better than the Resident Evil series, even better than Resident Evil 4. I enjoy this much, much more because this is like Resident Evil 4, but even better, even more like improved, and all the crappy things that was in Resident Evil 4. Not that Resident Evil 4 was a pretty good game. This Dead Space made it even better because now you got a cool looking character. You got the cool like Zack character. He's got the outfit. He's got the armored suit and everything. So he looks like a complete like Marine in space. He looks so cool. The weapons are cool because it's like futuristic weapons. You got a futuristic buzzsaw type of weapon, futuristic like rifles and handguns and things like that. the setting is much better also. Like, I love you're in a space mining ship, kind of abandoned and just, I guess, ransacked by these alien creatures that control dead bodies and things like that. It sort of reanimates like bodies, and it would kind of bring it back to life into a monster creature. So you're fighting off these monster alien things in space, basically. Really creepy stuff. I mean, it reminds me so much of like the old school Alien movie with Sigourney Weaver from the 70s, the Aliens movie from the 80s, which was the sequel to Alien. So it has a lot of influence from the Alien franchise. But and The Thing too, the movie The Thing from the early 80s. That was an awesome film, but like you could see traces of old movies, like really great classic films. Sci-fi horror movies from the 70s and 80s that really sort of influenced Dead Space stylistically and the way that the presentation, the setting and everything, but also in a twist of outer space. Love the gameplay. I love that third-person over-the-shoulder thing, and then you get to improve the weapons. You get to update your weapons, but you have to be very careful. You have to, you get only a limited amount of nodes. Those golden colored nodes that you gotta use to update your weapons or your armor. I think it's your weapons, but like you get to update your weapons and your armor, but it's very limited. And you gotta really take your you got to take your time, and you got to be careful. I should say you got to be careful in which weapons you want to upgrade, so that you keep progressing, and you get stronger weapons. Basically, you get stronger armor, you get stronger weapons, and you can combat the enemies, these alien creatures, in a much at least stand toe to toe with them and go up against them in. It's weird because I don't know if the enemies get stronger over the game. I'm assuming they do, and it's just like I don't know, because it's like you got the enemies, and at first like you might struggle a little bit, but it's not like you can't beat them. But then over time, as you progress through the game, your character gets a little bit stronger weapons, stronger armor, and I'm not sure if they just get like more vicious. They do more damage over time, so it kind of balances out. I never really bothered to check. It's just really fun to at least feel like your character is improving and getting better. It is kind of like Resident Evil 4 in that regard, obviously. But I much preferred it. The storyline it's good. You're in outer space. You got to explore this thing, find out what's going on. There's like a female character in there that's kind of mysterious. It's actually full of mystery. There's a lot more questions in this video game than answers. I mean, you just get so many things like, what's going on? Like, what is that? What's happening? And you just kind of have to explore it by yourself and just kind of figure it. You just experience it. You're just by yourself. You feel very isolated in this game, and I love it. You're going up against an entire army, an entire horde of like enemies. You're going through corridors. You're fighting through these creepy monsters that are out to basically destroy you and eat you alive, and so you got to fight them off, and it just feels like it's a very fun game. It's a great survival horror experience, and it is better than Resident Evil. I will keep saying that. All right, and number one, best PS3 game, Rainbow Six Vegas 2. Came out again in 2008. So here we go. The top 3, if not top 4, if you include BioShock, the top 4 games on the PS3 that I chose is from 2008. They've been from 2008. 2008 was one heck of a year, man. That has to be the best year. Like, that's the peak year of the PS3. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they stop making games after that, like in 2009, all of a sudden they're like, okay, no more PS3 games. I mean, it's not wrong to say that like PS3 got the best games in 2008. Like, well, they got the best anyway, so they got the best. They got BioShock, Saints Row 2, and Dead Space, and Rainbow Six Vegas 2. Like, that's the best. But as far as Vegas 2 is concerned, this has to be my favorite first-person shooter of all time. I mean, this is probably the best I've ever experienced. I keep playing it over and over again. Like, still to this day, I still go back to this game quite frequently. Like, you know, like, I don't play it, like, every single day, but a couple of months will go by, I'll be like, man, I haven't played Rainbow Six Vegas 2 in a while, so I'll go back to it. And I don't really do that with any other games. I keep going back to Vegas 2 because there's nothing else like it. You know, there's no other games that has that cover system where you're hiding behind something. The CPU can be quite difficult. You know what I mean? Like, the CPU knows exactly where you are. And it's, you know, this game's campaign, like, the story mode isn't particularly amazing. It's kind of okay, you know. You go through different, like, stages and different locations in Las Vegas, and that's fine and everything, and it's relatively easy to go through. But the shining moment in this game is the terrorist hunt. You know, you're hunting terrorists basically, and the amount of enemies that you can have, it's like it's basically you, one person, going up against like 40 different enemies, 40 people in a single level, in a single stage, and you gotta find every single one of them and hunt them, every single one of them down. The fun aspect of this game is the terrorist hunt. I mean, I just love it. I love the fact that you can fight so many different enemies. You have to you gotta get all of them, and they're all going up against you. So you got like 40 people, 40 enemies, and these enemies are not particularly, you know, they're not like super intelligent the way that you would fight against a human opponent. Like, if you're fighting up against humans in a multiplayer game, it's very unpredictable. You just never know what a human is going to do. A CPU is a lot more predictable, but at the same time, it's difficult enough because they sneak from behind sometimes. Like, it's always a little bit different every time that you play it because they're positioned differently every time. You just never know. There's a lot of variety in how they approach you. Sometimes they'll sneak you from behind. You don't know that they are sneaking you from behind because you can't hear their footsteps. You can hear their voices. They'll be yelling loudly sometimes, but other times they just sneak you from behind and they shoot you in the back. And then, you know, so there's been plenty of times where you have to restart the level over and over again because you keep getting owned by the computer. You know, say you keep getting killed by the enemy, by the CPU. I mean, so it just goes on and on and on. But it's just so fun to replay the stage over and over and over again. I got a couple of favorite stages, but I generally just enjoy playing this game. It's just a fun thing to keep playing over and over again because it's so unpredictable sometimes. Even if you do try to exploit like the enemy, the CPU's weakness, you hide behind, you know, a wall and a cover system, and then you wait for the enemy to come to you, and then they start coming to you, and then you start shooting at them. But then other times you got to go out of your way to look for them, and yeah, you know, you just never know which direction they're coming from, and so it's basically you going up against like 40 different enemies. That's still a lot of enemies, and they some of them, again, they sneak you from the side, from behind a wall, and you just really never know. So you got to be extra careful, and I think that's what makes it so fun is the challenging aspect of it. I love how this game is very challenging, and I enjoy Rainbow Six Vegas 2 so much. It is my favorite. It's got to be my favorite first-person shooter of all time. I haven't played any other game like it, at least to that level of difficulty and the fun replay value. I mean, I could say so many good things about any of the other ones that I mentioned before, the stuff on the PS2 and the stuff on other systems that's like, oh, that's a good first-person shooter, and oh, I really like Perfect Dark, or I really like Time Splitters, and I really like Unreal Tournament, and all these other shooters, but with Vegas 2, all the way from the hard CPU, you know, the CPU can be quite challenging, and many enemies to fight off against. The more slower, methodical approach that you got to take in the stages. You know, you're not just rushing into combat because you're going to get filleted by bullets. You know, there's going to be a lot of enemies coming after you, and so this is a game that I can keep playing over and over again, like literally to the day that I die. Rainbow Six Vegas 2 is one of those games that is just so fun to play over and over and over and over again. I can't really get like bored with this game. You know, the only problem that I have is that it's from 2008, so it looks very dated graphically. The graphics are so outdated looking, and it looks like it is from like that 2006, 2007 era, where, you know, the colors are not as bright, and the graphics are not as detailed, and there's not as much like animation, like especially like even like with the environments, you know, the trees don't move, you know, the leaves on the trees don't move at all. It just looks like this fixed like model. And it's not as detailed as later games like a Battlefield, Bad Company 2, or a Battlefield 4, or the later Call of Duty games. You know, it doesn't look as good as those games, but still, Vegas 2 is just, it has the gameplay. It's got that fun, addictive shooting experience. Oh man! So there you have it, Rainbow Six Vegas 2. I don't feel bad about it at all. Like, I'm not mad at choosing that. I don't feel like contested by that. You know, it was a little bit struggle between Vegas 2, Saints Row 2, and Dead Space. I will admit that was kind of tough to choose between those three games because of how much I loved Dead Space. I love Saints Row 2, but Vegas 2 is the one that I loved, and I can keep playing that again and again and again. Its replay value is endless practically. And I wish that I wish they make a new one that actually has the same gameplay. I know they got the newer Vegas game, I believe for the PS4 and the Xbox One. I forgot what it was called. Rainbow Six Vegas. Oh, not Rainbow Six something. I think Rainbow Six Siege is what it's called. But I'm not sure. Like, I've been looking at a lot of gameplay footage, and I'm not even sure if it has the same cover system, the same way that they have it with Vegas 2. Alright, so as far as honorable mentions, I had quite a bit of honorable mentions when I did the PS2 one, but even with the PS3 now, it's even more, a lot more titles this time around with the PlayStation 3 honorable mentions. I was quite shocked, actually. It was tough because, you know, this was a top 30 list, but there was also a bunch of other titles that was worth the gameplay and worth checking out, but, you know, maybe not quite. It didn't quite make the top 30 list. You know, not as good, or not good enough to make the top 30 list. So I'm just gonna show you this list that I have. So I actually have it here on my notepad. All right, so honorable mentions. I got, you know, Crash Team Racing, which is actually a downloadable. That's an old school PS1 game, but you can get it off the PSN on the PS3. It's only like $6 or something like that, so you can easily just, you know, that's a classic racing game, kart racing game on the PlayStation 1, and you can play it on the PlayStation 3. It's still one of the best kart racing games of all time. Like, really fun gameplay, very challenging. Crash Team Racing. You got Lair. I thought Lair was kind of underrated. I believe that one came out in 2007. That was like one of the early games for the PS3. That was an exclusive and used the what is that? That 6-axis gimmick. But as a game itself, Lair was kind of it was still a pretty cool game. You know, I thought it was a fun dragon game. You know what I mean? Still a pretty good game. It was overly criticized back in the day. I can understand why, because the controls was a little bit awkward, but it was still quite a fun game. You know, I still have it in the PS3. Borderlands was a fun game, although it did get kind of boring after you beat it the first time around. Little Big Planet was a fun little platformer. Saints Row 4 I thought was fun. It was a little bit different from the other Saints Row games because you have special powers, so it's more like Hulk Ultimate Destruction or Prototype. You know, you're jumping around these buildings and you're flying around like some sort of a superhero. Tekken Dark Resurrection, a pretty good fighting game. As much as I loved it, I thought it was a little bit better on the PSP, simply because there was you have more things to do with the PSP version. This one was just your bare bones fighting game. Not much, just the arcade experience here. It's still a solid game from like 2007. You know what I mean? Good graphics. It just doesn't have the campaign mode. The Sims 3 was good. 2K16, WWE 2K16 is okay. You know, not as good as 2K14. Although there are newer characters and more of an updated roster. Although this game is from 2015, so it is a couple of years old now. It has a ton of glitches though. It has way more glitches than 2K14. Split Second is also another like good racing game. One thing I noticed in this list is that I didn't have a lot of racing games. There really wasn't a whole lot, like compared to the PS2 list, top 30 PS2 games that had a bunch of street racing games. This one just did not have that many. There was a few that I liked and a few that I enjoyed. Split Second is probably the best street racing games out of the ones that I experienced. Even better than the Midnight Club LA, Midnight Club Los Angeles, better than the Need for Speed games, better than Blur and some of these other titles that came out. Stuntman Ignition is also kind of an underrated game. Kind of a fun game. It's like a sequel to the first Stuntman on the PS2. It's basically this unique a game where you gotta. It's almost like a what is that? A quick time event kind of thing where you're driving through a movie set, but you gotta press really quickly, like a quick time thing, like in the God of War games. So, a fun little game. Demon Souls. I didn't even include Demon Souls. Yeah, I thought Demon Souls was okay. And Dark Souls, too. The Dark Souls games. They're alright. Not my favorite. Not my, cup of tea. Simply because, I'll play them and I'll kind of enjoy it the first, couple of hours. But then after a while, you're just like, oh my god. This is just really, it's really, really tedious. Especially after you get vanquished and you got to restart the level over and over and over again. I just thought it was really, really tiring and really kind of repetitive and just very derivative. Even though, the graphics is good, the music is good for the Demon Souls and the Dark Souls games, they're just, I find myself getting really frustrated with those games. Singularity, I thought, was a pretty good shooter. It's sort of like Bioshock in terms of presentation a little bit, but not as good in terms of storyline and it's kind of a good shooter. Chronicles of Riddick: Assault on Dark Athena has 2 games in it. It's got that first game, Escape from Butcher Bay, from the original Xbox, remastered in HD, and then you got Assault on Dark Athena, the sequel. Pretty good first-person shooters. I like the Riddick franchise. I am a fan of it. I got the movies and everything, so this is a nice addition to that experience, and a really solid first-person experience. UFC Undisputed 2010, UFC game in there. That's probably one of the best ones. It's got so many different MMA names in there, Brock Lesnar and all that. Skate 3 was a good skateboarding game. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was a pretty good game. I do enjoy it. I guess out of all the Call of Duty games, that's my favorite one. COD Modern Warfare 2. That one I think came out in 2009. Good single-player campaign. Battlefield Bad Company 2. I really enjoyed that one. I love the characters. I like the first one, but the second one has even better graphics, so I gotta go with Bad Company 2 over Bad Company 1. Fallout 3. I got this game. I also have New Vegas, but I haven't really gotten into New Vegas. I've had the game for a while, but Fallout 3 I played quite a bit more. And this one, that was a fun game, but I felt like it did get a little bit kind of tedious after a while. I got bored of it, and I hate the fact that you can't kill certain enemies. Certain enemies are just invincible. I thought it was one of those games where you get to get rid of everybody. You have the option to just kill everybody, every character on there, but. So I had my fun with it. It's basically a better version of Oblivion and a better version of the Elder Scrolls action RPG games. The Resident Evil games are pretty good. I really like. I like them. I thought they were pretty good. A lot of people hate them. After Resident Evil 4, people hated Resident Evil 5. People hated Resident Evil 6. I thought they were pretty good sequels. They're not bad. They're not horror. They're not the slow-paced horror games anymore. They're not as they're not the classic Resident Evil experience. This is more like a third-person shooter type of thing. So it's just a little bit different. But I like it. It's more action-oriented. It's not as survival horror heavy. It's more about shooting. But it's not bad. They're not bad games. It's just they're a little bit different. Heavenly Sword was a good game. Maybe not as good as God of War. It's a little bit more. How can I even describe it? It's not as good as God of War, but it's not bad. It's not a bad early action adventure title on the PS3. It was an exclusive. I don't know if they'll ever put out a sequel to it. It features a really good-looking character, a sexy female. Kind of looks like Tara Patrick actually, which is really strange because I used to watch her movies back in the early 2000s. I don't know if they modeled it after her. I don't know if that was intentional, but just really strange. But Heavenly Sword was a good game. I enjoyed it. I never got to beat it because I got frustrated with the. There's a moment in the game where I got stuck. I think it might have been you're shooting the cannons and you got to use the 6-axis thing. Hitman Absolution was a good game. I really enjoyed Hitman Absolution. That was pretty fun. That's my favorite Hitman game in the series. For the most part, I thought Hitman was kind of boring. I used to have contracts Kind of a boring experience, but with Hitman Absolution, it was a lot more action heavy. It was kind of like a lot more shooting, So I enjoyed it a little bit more. And then there's a bunch of other ones. Mirror's Edge, I thought was a really good game. I beat that one on the Xbox 360, but I also have it on the PS3. Kind of a unique game too. I like that first person scaling the walls, almost like Assassin's Creed. Not Assassin's Creed. Prince of Persia, almost like Prince of Persia. Although I guess it also has a little bit of Assassin's Creed because you're jumping on rooftops and stuff like that. Mirror's Edge, though, pretty solid first-person shooter and kind of a unique game. I want to play through it again. This time on the PlayStation 3. I beat it on the Xbox 360, but I have it for both systems. Bulletstorm is another one that is I got it on both Xbox 360 and the PS3. Pretty good game. I like the whole bullet time thing. That's kind of like Sniper Elite. Splatterhouse is another like action heavy, very violent looking a game. Splatterhouse was cool. Wet was kind of fun. Darksiders, the first Darksiders was okay. It was an okay God of War like rip-off kind of game, but the graphics were pretty good. The character models were kind of cool. And then some of the other ones like the superhero comic book based ones, like an X-Men Origins Wolverine. I thought that game was pretty good action adventure type. There's a game called Deadpool. The Deadpool that was based on I guess it was a tie-in to the movie. Turok I thought was a pretty good one from 2008. Pretty decent first-person shooter. You're fighting off against dinosaurs. It's a continuation to the old Turok series from the 90s and on the N64. Bionic Commando I thought was good. Bionic Commando was a fun like little platforming thing. The 3D one, the 3D one with the guy with the long hair and he's got a bionic arm. That was kind of a fun game too. I quite enjoyed that one, even though I never really. I never beat it because I got so frustrated at some points. It can be quite difficult sometimes. The Crysis games are pretty good. Crysis 2 I enjoyed. Crysis 3 I also enjoyed. Just pretty good shooters. Again, these games are not good enough in my opinion to be top 30 material, but they were fun enough to be a part of your collection. Dante's Inferno was kind of an okay God of War style game. Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate and Last Round, whichever one you prefer. DOA is not a bad fighting game series. DOA 5 is kind of an okay game. Not as good as the Tekken games, but it's up there as far as like one of the better fighting games. Enslaved Odyssey to the West was cool. Injustice Gods Among Us, not a bad fighting game, kind of like a Mortal Kombat style, although it's not as violent. Just Cause 2 was okay. Imagine in the Forsaken Kingdom, Mod Nation Racers, Prototype, Rage was kind of alright. Prince of Persia from 2008, Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands from 2010. I've mentioned before I really like the Prince of Persia games, but these are the PS3 ones that are meant for the PS3. Still good games, still carry on a little bit of that legacy of the trilogy, but they're not as good as the trilogy, but still pretty fun and still pretty good. Sleeping Dogs was pretty good. I beat that one for the 360, but I also have this on the PS3. I got a lot of these games, some of these games on both systems. The Sly Collection, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection, Tokyo Jungle, the one that you can download, Time Shift, I beat that one for the 360, Ultra Street Fighter 4, which I do have that one. The whole Street Fighter 4 thing, I think, to me is a little bit like overdone, but I got the Ultra version. It's got all the characters and all that. And Virtua Fighter 5. Virtua Fighter 5, tremendous fighting game. Again, not as good as Tekken and some of the other ones that I mentioned, but still a pretty good one. So those are, some of the honorable mentions. As you can see, there's a ton of names in there, and you can imagine why I did not include. It's like I don't want to get into like super detailed with them because there's so many honorable mentions, and they're just that's what they are. They're honorable mentions. So they're good games, but I wouldn't include them in the top 30. They're not as good as the ones that I mentioned here in the top 30. So I guess out of all the ones in the honorable mentions, the one that I could say would be that maybe should have been in the top 30 might have been Mirror's Edge. But even Mirror's Edge is as fun as that was. I don't know what I would take off from the top 30. Like if I can take out one of them, yeah, I can't imagine taking out any of them, because the top 30 is such a solid thing. I guess maybe take out Bayonetta. Take out maybe Bayonetta or XCOM Enemy Unknown or Spec Ops or something like that. But yeah, but even those, I mean, those are the really good. Again, that's my top 30. That's what I chose. But Mirror's Edge was a really, really good one. So if I have to make a top 31, like Mirror's Edge would be number 31, I guess. So that's it for this episode of the Review Space. Thank you guys for checking out this list. This is my top 30 PlayStation 3 games of all time. And what's sad is that, like, I haven't played every single game on the PS3. There's still a few titles here and there that I really want to get into. There's a few, like, names and little, like, odd games here and there that I haven't really experienced yet. But aside from that, I've played, like, every single one of these games, and I own most of them, especially the ones in the top 30. And these are some of the best, greatest experiences that I've ever played when it comes to video games, and you can't really go wrong with any of them. You really I can't say enough good things about these games. Alright, so that's it for this episode. Check out the channel for more top 10s. Check out my top 30 PS2 games of all time, and even my top 100 list. I might actually make one of those 100 challenges if they actually have one for the PlayStation 3. The top 100 that's somebody else's list, and then I end up giving my opinion on it. So check out the channel for more videos and all that, more rants, more video game opinions, more podcasts, and just like music-related type podcasts and stuff like that, beatboxing, if you're into any of that stuff. That's what my channel has, baby. So until next time, peace.